This is interesting. I have no idea how this is going to work today, but this is what we're going to do. So good morning, everybody. We are live this morning. We are not in our normal situation. So as you can see, we've got some people behind us and our friend Kayla Blount is here. I'm going to kind of back up so the camera's going to follow me. We're going to sit down. So Kayla, God bless her, is the one who put this whole thing together. Never been in a studio before, so this is going to be really exciting. I have no idea. So we are missing. We do have two of our candidates today. So we have Bob Sullivan, who's on the left, and we have Marty Quinn, and we're going to let them give you just a little bit about themselves here in a minute. We did, Chris Merideth was scheduled to be here, and we don't know where he is, but we do have another chair over here, and when he comes in, the camera will. It's a very cool thing, this thing. The camera will pull back automatically and let us see him. So when he gets here, we will do that. So we, you know, Kayla Blount, who is not only the Oklahoma County GOP Chair, but she has her own insurance agency, which explain to me, it's 317
Insurance Advisors. And
where does the 317 come from?
that is Colossians 3:17.
Yes, that will help me remember. Can I keep going? Is it 450 or 312 or 317? Okay, I'm so glad to know this now. So 317 Insurance Advisors, and she's been on the show several times because we've talked about insurance issues that you guys have had questions on, and I'm going to go over here. So hang on just a second, because just in case you have comments. I don't have them up yet. So there, at least now I'll be able to see your comments if you have them. So Kim and I were talking, obviously we all know that 2026 is a big year because we've got a number of very important
Offices that are up for.
Yeah. So you had the gubernatorial, OK2A had the gubernatorial.
Well, it wasn't sponsored by the county last night. It was sponsored by OK2A, but it was wonderful. All of the so far announced gubernatorial candidates were there except for one. So we had 5 candidates there last night. It was wonderful. There were several hundred people, and it was a wonderful turnout. The questions were great. All of the candidates stayed over an hour past the event to visit with their constituents. So it was a good event last night.
Awesome. And I was so sad I didn't get to make it. We won't go into the reasons why, but we didn't get to make it, which was stunk. All right. So you and I were talking, and well, we talked before about consumers are getting squeezed with insurance. And I was just talking to somebody, I think it may have been on StreamYard last week. And somebody had told me that they had just gotten that they've owned their home 8 years. And when they first started paying insurance on their home, they were paying $2,400 in insurance. And now they're up to $6,500. And so at some point, and you and I have talked about this, I mean, older people and people on fixed incomes they simply can't afford it. So now they're at the point where, well, I can either pay property tax and not have the state take my home away, or I can paying my insurance, and then at least if the house burns down.
Yeah.
Hello, Shane, how are you this morning? So consumers are dying in Oklahoma right now with insurance. And you and I when we talked about this last time, you said that what you thought might be happening and what I had read somewhere was insurance agencies are kind of using Oklahoma as a way to they're raising their rates here to cover some of the other losses that they've had in other states. Is that, you think that might be happening, or?
There's several reasons why it's happening, but you're kind of giving me pause. I was ready to set this podcast up so I wouldn't be in the hot seat for once. No, there are several different reasons why there's increasing insurance, but something that definitely needs to be watched and looked at, because we are on an unsustainable path when it comes to the cost. You know, you've got rising property values, which makes the property taxes go up. That also makes the insurance go up because the value of the insurance goes up because there's more to cover, which then the premiums, but then you have other factors that also increases the premiums. And it's just, we're on an unsustainable path. So,
well, and especially for people with who are on fixed income. So
yes,
we've got to get to the bottom. So I think it was your idea. You said, let's invite all the insurance commissioner candidates at one time and just kind of ask them questions and see where we are on them. And so I say, you ready to get going?
excellent.
You
Yes.
have made some excellent questions, and I will tell you, these aren't my questions. This is the person who knows insurance who is asking. She's got some phenomenal questions here. So here's what we're going to do. If Chris shows up, we'll pull him in. But until he shows up, what we're going to do is we're going to ask each of the guys the question. They'll have 2 minutes to answer the question, then we'll move on, because otherwise we're just afraid we're not going to get through this in a whole day. So if you have questions, keep putting them up keep talking on the board. And if you've got questions, then we'll ask them questions as we go. We'll try to pull them in. So hang with us. Okay. So you ask questions and I will time. How about
Okay,
that?
excellent.
Okay.
Well, we should have arm wrestled before, but
Okay.
let's pick a number between 1 and 5.
5.
1 and 5? Okay. You're not going to be the state auditor.
4.
Well, not 1 and 5. Well, I think you're good at, 1 and 5, which,
Sure.
okay, the number was 5, so you got 4. So, all right, we're going to start off. It's important to know your candidates and what motivates them to run for a particular office. So the first question is, what motivated you to run for insurance commissioner, and what unique experience do you bring to this?
Sure. So just a quick introduction. My name is Bob Sullivan, candidate for insurance commissioner. I've been a 20-year veteran of the Oklahoma property and casualty insurance industry. Started out my career as an underwriter for Hanover Insurance, and for the last 15 years have been on the agent and broker side as an independent agent based out of Tulsa, working with clients all over the state, homeowners, small business owners, large business owners, but all in the property and casualty space. And during that time, had unfortunately the task of coordinating and communicating to my clients why their rates have been going up. And it's been a hardening market with increasing property rates and property premiums for the bulk of my career. And I think it's gotten to the point where it's a breaking point, it's a tipping point, and we're seeing Oklahomans be squeezed in a way that they've never been before with their homeowners rates. I'm a homeowner myself. I see it on my own homeowners insurance renewal. And it just drives home the fact that I think this is an area of our industry that has not been given enough attention, has not been given enough regulatory oversight. And it's time to take that 20-year experience and knowledge and expertise and start putting some of these insurance carriers operating in our state to task to justify these rates and justify what I deem to be their unfair trade practices regarding how they adjust claims, how they handle claims, that ultimately drives the cost up even further and faster for Oklahomans. It was just a calling put on my heart that it's time to step away from a side of the industry that's been very good to me and my family. We've been blessed to be in this industry. It's a wonderful industry, but not to the detriment of Oklahomans in a lot of cases. And I think it's time to step into a public service role.
Well, let's turn it over to Marty. And so Marty.
And just real quick,
Yeah.
so just to make sure, so we're in a new setting,
Yeah.
usually, so make sure that we want to make sure that you're looking out at the audience and also the microphone is up there.
I know, it's that's the worst thing.
Weird, yeah. So,
Yeah.
Marty, what motivated you to run for insurance commissioner and what unique experience do you bring to this role?
Well, obviously, experience is the biggest thing that I bring to the office. And it's in my skill set, it's in my wheelhouse, it's in my comfort zone. It's where I've been for the last 40 years, basically. And I started out in my hometown in Arkansas as an agent for Shelter Insurance Company, and went into management. I went to Kentucky for about 8 years. Left there and came to Oklahoma in 1995 in a management role. We're back into the agency force. 2010, we went into the legislature for 12 years, 4 in the House and 8 in the Senate. And I think all of that builds a broad-based level of experience that nobody else in the race is going to have that much of experience, that broad of a base of what we've been doing from as many angles. And I tell people that I've been on both sides of the desk and all around the desk, dealing with all the different things, whether it's the corporation, whether it's the consumer, whether it's the legal system in the middle. We've had experience with all those things. So what motivates me is that, it is a business that you get to serve people. It's one that when everybody else is asking for a check, the insurance industry, if they're doing their job and doing it appropriately, those companies, those agents are actually delivering a check to, in some cases, at least try to replace what's been damaged or destroyed, whether that's the life of a spouse, or whether that's a home, or whether that's a business. And I've been involved in all those things. We feel very, very blessed by being a part of an industry that has the ability to do those type of things. We've enjoyed it. I want to continue that, and I know that we have the skills and the abilities to address some of these issues that we've talked about.
Okay. So before we go on, Copper Claus said, I talked with Chris Merideth last night at the Comanche County Republican Party community update, as well as Senator Dusty Devers. Merideth was knowledgeable, experienced contractor, I guess is what she's saying, as well as the insurance realm. He spoke directly about how the oversight is not there. He has viable solutions and he listened. So I guess if we Copper Claus has introduced us for. So thank you so much for the comment. Okay. And let me see, I'm trying to find a better way to tell you guys what time it is, because I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't want to stop you. So I think what I'll do is when you start getting time, I'm going to kind of stick it out like that, and then you can see it. And then, will that work?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I don't want to interrupt. Well, I'm going to hit you because you're close. You were fine. All right, you ready?
All right, so we're just going to dive right in. I think this is a position where you don't have a lot of softball questions just because where we are in the market. We're not trying to corner anybody, but this is something that we really need to dive into, because one of the things that we're looking against is some of the legislators that we've talked to in the past few months. They're starting to get involved because they're receiving calls from their constituents going, these prices are out of control. What do you do? So one of the things that we want to balance is make sure that we don't turn ourselves into California, where the legislature gets a hold of this. They have well-intentioned ideas, but this is not their area of expertise. So we want to make sure that someone who does have expertise helps guide them if this does go down the path of legislation. So we want to start with the question is, what are your thoughts on House Bill 389, the Strengthen Oklahoma Homes Act that was passed in 2024 in Oklahoma to establish grants and a mitigation program for fortified homes? So
Sure. I think building resiliency has a major component to play and a major role to play in the long-term viability and sustainability of the Oklahoma insurance market. It's just common sense. Better built buildings are more resilient to our weather and to our wind and hail and a variety of other things. Certainly you can look at fire protective materials as well as a component of that from the fire load. I have questions about how those grants are functioning. Obviously, you're required to, the homeowner or business owner, building owner is required to have that building pre-inspected and pay that out of pocket to a certified contractor of some sort to determine whether or not they're a candidate for this grant. At which point there's, I believe, a $10,000 grant available to those homeowners, or business owners, up to for reinforced roof decking, weatherproofing of the roof decking material, different shingle and roof surfacing materials. And I think that's all well and good. I think that has a role to play in the long-term viability of the marketplace. You can't just lean on that, though. I don't know that that's enough of an answer to fixing this problem. It is certainly a helpful thing. What I don't know, just from my own ignorance, and I'll admit that readily, is where that grant money is coming from and what the long-term sustainability and viability of that grant money is. I don't know if these are federal funds that are being passed through the state, if this is something that we need to be concerned about in the event of a shutdown or something along those lines, where a homeowner has incurred tremendous expenses to fortify their homes, and then they're stuck in limbo, waiting on a check, waiting on some drawdown from the federal government.
That's it. Yeah, because I don't know. Do you know where the funds?
So the funds do not come from the state, they come from grants, but truly, where do grants come from? So it is
Sometimes nonprofits that we don't want to deal
That's
with.
from the premium tax.
from the premium
Premium
tax.
tax where it comes from.
Excellent.
All right, well,
All right, you want me to read the question, Marty?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
The affordability home program, it's one of those things to me, I want to take a wait and see attitude. It's already in place. I know that the merits behind it, I think, Commissioner Glen Mulready has, a lot of information from other states, Alabama being one of those that implemented that, I think back in 2020. So they have a little bit of a history. We don't have that history in Oklahoma. We have just a small number of houses. I think that number is somewhere north of 60. So we're going to have more data to see how this does long term. Now, having said that, if it does its job, let it prove itself. And in Alabama, they feel like that they've got some data that supports that. I want to be able to see that same data. We're taking premium tax dollars and can give up to $10,000, but not everybody's going to get that. Now, the other thing that I want to see is finding enough people that can certify these actual building programs that are out there. Can we have enough certified people that will be there when they start this process of doing these routes? And time will tell on that. And if it proves itself out, then it's one that we will continue and support. But we want to make sure anytime these premium tax dollars come from taxpayers when they pay their insurance premium. So we want to make sure that that money is being spent in the way that it's intended, that it accomplishes what it needs to accomplish, and that we're using those dollars appropriately.
Well, you kind of answered, both of you answered the next question. So it's along the same lines, though. We're going to go to the next one. Marty, I'll come up here and start with you this time. Does the fortified construction program do enough to address the main issue for property insurance in Oklahoma, especially when it comes to hail damage?
Now, I think there's a lot of other factors. I'm glad to see that efforts are being made, but there'll have to be other areas. Here's an example. 1982, the insurance company started making aggressive movements in broadening the coverages of homeowners, and they were doing that for competitive reasons amongst each other because CD rates were at 16%. So they wanted more premium dollars to put on that. And so what happened, they wound up with a guaranteed replacement cost policy. That's unaffordable. That's unsustainable. It became a maintenance policy. And we have to look at those type of things to make sure what coverages can we put into a homeowner package policy that the consumer can afford and that the companies or the corporations can actually fund properly and make sure when they have those claims that they have the reserves set aside to be able to pay for that. So there's a lot of things like that, you know, and we're going to have some strong conversations with companies to say, hey, you're used to in Oklahoma just being able to file your rates and move on down the road without repercussions. Nobody wants to go to nobody that knows what can happen wants to go to a different program that a commissioner by himself can control rates. That's not the direction we need to go. But corporations are going to have to look. This is a situation we've never been in, and help us start finding those sacred areas that maybe have been protected in the past, to look at them a little bit different, so that corporations, consumers, and everybody involved in this situation can find solutions that will help us long term. They can be financially stable. The consumer can afford the product.
Okay.
Bob, do you need me to read the question again, or?
No, I think, again, building resiliency is a component of the insurance marketplace. And I think better buildings are certainly more attractive to insurance carriers. They want to write good business in the state. They want to write profitable business in the state. I don't begrudge them for wanting to do that. That's why they're in business. But I think a big component to me is insurance is a promise to pay. It is a promise and a contract with the consumer to respond in a particular way, in a responsive way, in a way that restores Oklahomans after their worst day, after the hailstorm blows through, after the fire tears down their house, or the tornado tears down their house, or their roof is leaking and damaging all the equipment in their business. I think how insurance carriers have been less than responsive to their claims is detrimental not only to the consumer, but also to the insurance company. They have a component of those policies for loss of use to the property and putting people up in hotels and all of the extra expenses that go into getting people back to some sense of normalcy following a loss. And I think the longer that those claims are drawn out, the more disruption families face and businesses face. And that drives up the cost of the claim ultimately, and that cost is passed on to other consumers. And I think insurance carriers need to do a better job, and there needs to be additional oversight. And I don't want to use the term regulation, but there needs to be an extra set of eyes on how they're responding to those claims, how quickly they're being responsive to their policyholders, because that's to the betterment of all. Your consumer, your policyholder gets restored back to normalcy quicker and can resume normal life. And the cost of the claim's not artificially inflated and being passed on to the rest of us.
So let me, if you don't mind it, can I ask a quick question or just make a comment?
Are you talking about lobbies? Oh, okay.
After what these guys said. So we, out in Luther, we were part of the area that had the wildfires that came through in March. And so two of my neighbors and friends both lost their homes. I mean, like burned to the ground. And it's been very sad to watch both of them endure what they've been going through with their insurance companies. One lady actually had to hire a person to come in and arbitrate the usage or the spending of the things that they were trying to get. Then they were arguing about everything. And so I'm going to ask you, this is going to be off the top of my head, if you don't mind. This is more what I do on the show. So I'm going to ask you both, is there some way, is there something that the insurance commissioner can do to make, and I thought you alluded to it, Bob, which is what brought the question up. Is there something the insurance commissioner can do to stay on insurance companies in order to make them meet? You had said it's a bond, right? I mean, that's what insurance is it's a bond. Here, if you pay me, then I will pay you if you need it back. So what can the insurance commissioner do to facilitate better communication between the person with the loss and the insurer, where there might be, quite a bit of squabbling going on?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I think there is a consumer protection division of the Oklahoma Insurance Department. There is a complaint department that can intercede in discrepancies or disagreements. There's also components of the insurance policy that address third-party appraisals and finding an arbiter, somebody to come in and help settle these disagreements and discrepancies. I think that the insurance department has a role to play in that. They could be more active. And I've had clients, and I've been through this with my clients over the years, where we've had disagreements with insurance carriers, and ultimately that client wanted to involve the insurance department and the insurance commissioner's office. And I haven't had any real positive outcomes from that process. And that's been a source of disappointment. And part of my motivation for getting into this is trying to enact some real change and give Oklahomans an opportunity and a better path forward if and when some kind of disagreement like this arises. Because you're right, the squabbling and the nickel and diming of every single little thing that, these people have just had a tremendous amount of trauma occur in their lives. And for insurance carriers to be adversarial in that process and make a bad day worse is unacceptable.
All right, what about you, Marty?
Well, it's unfortunate. It's not just in the insurance business. It happens in all facets of our life, to where that, people make promises in business and they don't want to fulfill those. I would say by and large, that most of the insurance companies in Oklahoma do a very good job of fulfilling that promise and that obligation. But the commissioner, to me, at the very foundation of what they're responsible for, is making sure that if you want to do business in Oklahoma, you're going to abide by the statutes and the regulations that have been passed by the legislature to make sure that you take care of the consumers like you said that you would. When that doesn't happen, I do think that we need to have an active role in making sure that you start the process. We don't need to make it worse than it is, but we need to make sure that those companies know, listen, don't play games with me. You made a promise, fulfill that obligation. Now, at the same time, if we're really being honest, then there's multiple parties in that, whether it's contractors, whether it's consumers, whether it's the legal system, and all of them have to be willing to play by the rules and make sure that but there are, I know from too many sources since I've been out knocking doors since way back earlier in the year, that there are people trying to there's companies that are trying to take shortcuts, and we cannot have that. The consumer is in no condition financially to deal with that, especially when you get into some of the single families and some of the widow ladies, some of our elderly, some of the least of who we deal with each day. We cannot have that type of environment. And whether it's one case or whether it's 1,000 cases, it's too many, and we've got to correct that. And that consumer protection division I'm going to, day one, make sure that it is staffed properly, make sure that we're funding it properly, to where that when those calls come in, we can do the job that the insurance commissioner's office is designated to do.
All right, so you want to hit the next one, and then also too, Connie Thayer has a question.
Yes.
I don't know how you want to do it.
So Connie, yes, that is excellent. Connie, we're going to get that in. We're going to talk one question about the roofs, and then we're going to go to yours. Yours is actually next, so great minds. I love it. So you did the last one first, right? Oh gosh, good thing I'm not auditing this because I already forgot who went first. Okay, Marty, you're gonna get this question first. So talking about the roofs and things that consumers can do to help the insurance pricing. One of the things is Class 4 shingles are only warranted to 2-inch hail. Every year, Central Oklahoma generally has multiple storms with hail that's larger than 2 inches. Because of the size limitation of companies have decreased or terminated discounts for Class 4 shingles. Because of the frequency that Central Oklahoma sees with storms that have larger than 2-inch hail, do you believe this discount is warranted and sustainable for companies?
Yeah, I think the companies are the ones that have to determine whether that is financially sustainable or not. And the reason that I say that is this: we don't just have hail in Oklahoma, we have wind. We don't just have 2-inch hail, we have baseball size hail. Sometimes we have softball size hail. And you know anything about storms, you know that sometimes that hailstone goes up and down. It's very violent. It doesn't come down in balls. It comes down in chunks. So all of those things are not going to, Class 4 is not going to sustain those extreme type situations, but the companies actuarially will have to decide whether that is something that they will continue, because wind is a huge part of the issues that we have as far as claims and severity and frequency in Oklahoma.
Right, Bob, you have any?
Frankly, I'll agree with Mr. Quinn. Whether it's how insurance carriers determine their discount strategy and how they structure those is their business to handle. But Class 4 shingles, you're right. The ratings for them are insufficient for the type of weather that we experience here in Oklahoma. I think that is something that the building material manufacturers of the world need to be paying closer attention to, and we need a Class 5. We need something that's going to be resilient enough to handle the type of weather that we experience here in Oklahoma. And I don't know where they're at in the development of those type of materials. That is something that I've worked with some building material manufacturers over the years, and their R&D departments are aware of this sort of thing. But I don't know what's there. I don't know how close we are to having something viable and affordable for Oklahoma consumers to put on their roofs that's going to stand up to this type of weather. Marty's point about wind being another driving force is absolutely correct. More often than not, we have wind and hail simultaneously in Oklahoma, and those roofing materials are sometimes gone by the time the hailstorm rolls through, and they're just hitting bare decking, which compounds things even worse. It's a difficult thing to manage, and I don't know what the answer to that particular facet of the industry is.
Yeah, it's questionable. So, and Connie, I said we would get to yours after this. I do have one more question, so I apologize. Yours will be next. But talking about the class, talking about the Class 4 shingles. So one of the things that some of the carriers are talking about is encouraging folks to get the higher class, higher impact shingles. And one of the questions we have, and I think you'll go first on this one, could the Class 4 shingle and fortified construction discounts actually backfire by not decreasing claims frequencies enough to justify the increased severity of the claims due to the more expensive materials?
I do think that is something to be aware of. I mean, more expensive materials that are still going to be replaced with the same level of frequency as less resilient or substandard, if you want to use that terminology. That is potentially putting gas on the fire, because you're going to want to replace your Class 4 with Class 4. You don't want to downgrade. You don't want to be forced into a situation where you can only afford the downgraded materials. It's definitely a concern, and it's something that insurance carriers have brought up multiple times in the Oklahoma homeowners and commercial property marketplace. Again, whether we're talking about metal roofs or other types of materials that some people may or may not like the aesthetics of, or like the acoustics of, with the old metal roofs that were just incredibly noisy and people hated them. You're seeing development in other type of roofing surfaces that I think are worthy of consideration. But it's a difficult thing to manage, and a lot of it is a personal choice. Perhaps considering a different type of material or a different look for your roofscape is something worth considering.
Thank you. Marty, do you want me to read the question? Or?
No, I think sometimes in the industry, the companies are always looking for that competitive edge, and giving some discounts here or there along the way. Sometimes, they look at that as a marketing ploy, not as much maybe as something that would really, really, really help them on the claim side. And in Class 4 shingles, I mean, I've been in the business long enough to know that your contractors will come through and say, hey, for an additional X number of dollars, you can go to this, this type of shingle, and it's going to stand up. And so that sometimes gets rolled over to, companies saying, well, if it's really that good of a product, we'll give a little bit of a discount. We give up that premium so that we can be a little bit more competitive on the homeowner side. And that's why I say at the end of the day, it has to actuarially come out to where they, over a period of time, they figure out, well, the money that we're losing is not coming back in the forms of avoiding those, so the severity of claims. So we're going to do away with that. But that's a company decision. If they want to use it as a marketing ploy, that's their problem. But in Oklahoma, when about 70% of the claims that you're going to have are going to come from wind and hail, and some of those are going to be really, really severe, we've got to figure out a different way of fine tuning the cost associated. And it's not just the roof. It's in a lot of other areas, but the roof is one of those major ones, and it's the most frequent.
So before we get going, this is scary and interesting to me. So Copper Claus says on 17th December 2021, we received our policy agreement for January 2022 on our homeowner insurance. Our insurance rate increased 51%. 2021 policy price was $1,324.88 versus 2022 policy price $2,003.67. When we called our agent, we were told that the cost of the insurance was based on, quote, unforeseeable rebuild costs, unquote, attributable to inflation costs of labor and materials. Then she goes on to say, the homeowner's insurance for 2024 will be $3,217. So currently at a 14%, 141% increase in homeowners insurance rates in a 3-year period. Eventually the insurance cost per month will equal the mortgage payment. 2025 rates increased 12%. Is it 12%? Right? Can you think? Okay. And we are awaiting the 2026 rates now. That is a good segue into your question, because I thought, oh my word, but that's what I've heard. That's what happened to me. That's what I've heard across the board. So let me turn it back over to you.
Okay, so I think this is probably going to be the question of the podcast, but
So too.
how do you,
We'll give you 3 minutes on this.
how do you intend to address the rising insurance premiums, especially for home and auto?
I think a big component of, I'll go to my experience in Oklahoma. We are the first state to see a rate increase, and I've written in probably 40 states of the union. We are the first state to see rate increases from insurance carriers, and we're the last to see a rate decrease in their times of profit, if we see one at all. That there was a softening of the market in the 2007 and 8 time frame, but and we saw rates decrease on the property and homeowners landscape during that time, but we were the last one to get that rate decrease, I would all guarantee. And I think that is, to your point earlier, Jenny, I think unduly subsidize some other states and how insurance carriers are profitable or not profitable in those other states, whether it be wildfires in New Mexico and Colorado, California, or hurricanes and hail in Alabama. I think that we just have found ourselves, and Oklahoma has been treated as the cash cow for some of these other states at times, and I don't think that's appropriate. Furthermore, I don't think that the transparency is there regarding insurance company profitability, and I think a big component of dragging out those claims the way I described earlier is a function of how well those insurance companies are performing with their investment portfolios. The longer they hold on to that money and the longer they delay the payout of claims, the more investment income they're accruing in those portfolios. And that's not something that is talked about or given a lot of oversight on. It's protected under trade secrets with the insurance carriers. And I don't think that that's appropriate. I think there needs to be transparency, there needs to be clarity, and they need to be held to account for how they're performing, not just on their pure loss ratio, not just on premium dollars in to premium dollars out. They make money on those investments too.
Well, let me ask you this, because you went a little bit over, but I'm going to give you plenty of time to answer, Marty, so don't worry about it. But here's what I want to know after your question, because I think intuitively all the people who are watching this morning are going, that makes sense to me. I'm just sick of it. So how do we fix it? So I'm going to give you some extra time, and then Marty, I'll do the same thing for you. Tell me how you want to go about fixing those things that you just said.
Well, I think it does have a legislative component to fixing that problem. There's a few draft bills, and you mentioned one of them, Resiliency Act. There's a few that are being drafted for the upcoming state legislative session that address transparency and removing some of those trade secret protections from insurance carriers, both on the P&C side, property and casualty, and on the health insurance side. There's bills being drafted to address their utilization of AI for claim denials, and that affects both sides of the insurance industry as well. That's an ongoing issue. I think having that transparency in pricing and how they're performing outside of just their quarterly and annual profitability statements. Some of these are publicly traded companies. Some of the mutual companies are a little tighter with their financial results, but I think having that transparency for the OID's benefit, as well as just consumer benefit. I've had some very active policyholders in my career that are monitoring the financial stability and performance of who they're insuring their homes with and their businesses with. I think that's good consumer activism and due diligence. You want to know who you have that contract with, that promise to pay. And you should know, and you should be able to see how they're performing, how they're doing their business, and what they're doing with your money. Should they collect that premium check?
Well, now I feel kind of bad because I haven't been doing that. Now I'm feeling I'm falling down. Okay,
You're not
Marty, you've
alone.
got almost 3:45 there.
We have to get all the parties to the table, so to speak. I think one of the things that I've talked about in the different meetings that I've had, and the ideas that we have here today may not be ideas that we can actually implement if we were king for a day or commissioner for a day. But at least at this stage of the game, one of the things that I feel like that we have to have is all the parties at the table. Form a committee, form a commission, whatever it is that you want to use as far as that term. I want to talk to contractors. I want to talk to companies. I want to tell those companies, you're used to filing your rates and not having to worry about any repercussions. That's not going to be the case moving forward. You can bet there will be legislation at the Capitol waiting on these companies when we get there. But here's the warning sign. That may be the worst thing that you can possibly do. But if we can get mortgage companies and realtors and contractors and agents and many other factors and bring that together and say, listen, let's have a brainstorming session and start avoiding those sacred things of the past to where that, this is how I've been wanting to do business for decades. We want to continue. It may not be the way that we have to do business in the future. I don't want any sacred cows. That's an old saying. I don't want any sacred cows that we're not going to look at or we're going to be afraid of touching. Having said all of that, we have to have those companies say, listen, these people can no longer afford the rate that you're producing. Do we need to go to the legal system and say, what are we going to do in the litigious market that says we can no longer afford to pay for the kind of payouts we're making? But the company has to say, we're not going to be playing games with claims anymore. And those things are happening. And those are the conversations we're going to have with those companies to make sure this is a serious situation, because unless you start doing business in a different way and finding ways to make the product more affordable, that pendulum swings way out here one day and it swings way out here the next day. Both of those causes issues, and we want to avoid that. And that's why that I would tell companies, let's come to the table, let's work on solutions together. And whether it's the banking industry that you're talking about, here's an example of why I use that. If we went to a straight actual cash value type policies, banks are not going to be for that at all. Why?
And they got to go up with the money.
It creates too big of a risk for them.
No.
But banking industry, corporations, insurance companies, how do we work through that? That's just some things that I know from a coverage standpoint that we've actually got to look at, and using that as an example of we've been doing business a certain way, And this is where we're at. And people are telling us everywhere I go. If I go into the bank, if I go into the real estate, if I go into the mortgage company, go into the closing company, or I talk to the average person on the street, they can no longer afford the products that are out there.
Well, and I'll say too, that's not just, I mean, we're talking about homeowners, I think in a lot of ways, because, well, I mean, most of us fortunately in Oklahoma have homes. But it's the same way with health insurance. I mean, I talk to people who say, well, I guess I'm gonna give up my health insurance now because I can't afford to, can't do that and keep my car insurance, keep my house insurance. It's like we're being insuranced to death.
Well, goodness, it even affects the folks that are renters because the property owners, if they get an increase, more than likely they're gonna pass that on to the renter. So really no one is immune to the rate increases. So Marty, we'll start with this, and we love watching the comments. I love how interactive people are, and they're really good questions because it touches on multiple facets of what we're trying to address here. And so somebody, I think Mr. Stanley just stated this, but this is one, or talked about this, but Marty, all of our bordering states have property insurance rates far less than Oklahoma, yet in recent years, like in North Texas, Arkansas, Southern Kansas, have had storms of equal or greater events than ours. Is it possible that Oklahoma rates rise faster than our bordering states because of our filing process? And real quick, but just to make sure that the viewers know, maybe you can both touch on what Oklahoma's filing process is with the carrier so that the consumers understand how the rates get to us.
Oklahoma has a file in use, and basically those companies that want to do business in Oklahoma, if they decide that they need an 18% rate increase on auto and a 24% rate increase on homeowners, they file that with the state and they start using that. Other states have programs that they may make them wait 30 days or 60 days or at least a period of time before they can start using that. Ideally, when everybody's playing ball with the same rules, you'd like to think that they would file those rates appropriately. And that's one of the things that I would say too. I don't believe that companies that realize the statutes and the regulations that are out there, we're supposed to be filing rates based off of Oklahoma's experience. If there are companies out there that are not doing that, they're in serious trouble. Now, if that means that we have to have an actuarial study to make sure that those type of things are happening, be aware because we cannot do those type of things. Now, at the basis of insurance, when you look at that definition, it says to spread the risk. That's the way that those type of things happen. But we've got to make sure that Oklahomans are not being used or abused in this rate process. And I hope and pray that those things are not going on. And we can look at claims data for Kansas, for Arkansas, for Texas, for Colorado, whatever direction in the region that you want to go to make sure that that's not happening. But if it is, that's a serious problem.
I mean, I'll agree completely with the commentator. I've seen it firsthand. And a client of mine back in my underwriting days that was moving operations just across the border from Arkansas to Oklahoma had major sticker shock just from crossing. He was moving his plant 15 miles. The risk was not materially changing as far from a weather standpoint, but his premium sure did.
And that's what happens live.
This is
not me cleaning up the carpet later on.
Live podcast, people. So yeah, I've seen it firsthand, and had clients be very pleased when they moved out of our state over to Arkansas or to Kansas, and that breaks my heart as a lifetime Oklahoman to know that our competitive advantage, our low cost of living, is being gobbled up by our insurance rates. And we're losing our edge, and we're losing out on potential businesses coming to our state and putting down operations or relocating from other states. We're missing out on opportunity that we should be capitalizing on, and we shouldn't let something like our insurance rates get in the way of that. To your, to Marty's point about our filing stance, I'm not in favor of going to a prior approval way of rate approval. I think that's a California heavy-handed type of regulatory environment that would put us at a further competitive disadvantage as far as attracting insurance carriers to come to our state. And there are good companies out there that don't do business in Oklahoma. Due to our wind, due to our hail, for varying reasons, business reasons, they just don't see us as a viable state to profitably write business in. And I think that's a role of the insurance commissioner, to be out there and putting us in a position to recruit and attract good insurance carriers to come into our state.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if you, I wish it was a smell TV because the coffee smell that
I
was
know.
fabulous in
I'm
here.
so sorry. That was a good one. Well, and it went everywhere too. I mean, we're lucky it didn't go up the wall. So I do want to ask a question though, because I know people and we've got so many good comments, and the only problem is I have to go there and scroll
Yes.
through them. So, but there were so many comments that were talking about, there were, and I'm not going to remember them now, but I think the thing that concerned me is what you guys were talking about in the last question. And I want to kind of
I
maybe
think that might address it here.
It will for
Okay.
sure, but I want to drill down to the actual why.
Okay.
So maybe we just round table this for a minute so that we can kind of discuss it. Marty, let me make sure I understood what you said. You said that the way insurance companies in Oklahoma file their rates is they just say, here is my rate, and they send it to the OID, and then that's it. They move on.
Well, there's an actuarial process that they go through. I mean, they're going to look back. Most companies are going to use a 5-year history. And when you look at from
But Oklahoma history, or are they doing
No.
a regional history or something like that?
Oklahoma history,
Okay.
they're going to look at the premium that they collected. They're going to go back and look at the loss frequency and severity of the last 5 years. And when you look at those first few years in 21, 22, 23, you had the inflation rate just go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that 4-year period of time was the worst inflation period that we've ever had in the history of the company. And that came in a short period of time. So insurance companies were going back 5 years that you didn't have that inflation. You didn't have those cost increases to that level. And then added to that, we go boom, boom, boom with a bunch of tornadoes and hail and wind and all the damage associated that with a much, much, much higher cost of replacing the damage that was done with materials that when they were looking back 5 years, they didn't have that information in there. Now, I'm not trying to justify where we're at right now, but it is a huge component of what happened in that short period of time of companies trying to get back into a favorable position. But the filing part of it itself is off of them saying, here's our numbers, and we feel like that we're going to have this percentage of increase to justify the frequency and severity of the last several years.
Well, I kind of feel like we haven't had a whole lot of weather in the last several years compared to, my goodness, we've had mile-wide tornadoes here. So in the past several years, I don't feel like we've had the weather that we've had. Now, obviously that's anecdotal. Like, I haven't gone into the weather service to check, but it does seem like after COVID, everything went high, during and after COVID, and then it just stayed high. I mean, Bob, is it the thought that it is that kind of part of it? Is everything went high after COVID, and so now we're just gonna keep the rates? I don't know. I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall because I do know so many people. We're all so confused about this. Sure. And we're mad. So it's like confused and anger.
Right. Well, and I can say anecdotally, looking at a bulk of my business is in the commercial space. We have seen in doing our due diligence as agents and brokers, we run those cost estimators for our clients on large commercial buildings and most commercial buildings. And we have seen in the last year and a half, those replacement cost valuations start coming back down, and we're seeing the pendulum hopefully swing back to more of a normal normal cost for building materials. And obviously the labor component of that is still in flux. Labor is more expensive now, and that's not likely to change. But I think that the insurance industry as a whole had a knee-jerk reaction to the COVID era inflation, and I think they overshot. And I think we're starting to see some of that come back, but it's a fight on the agency side, having to have those conversations with insurance carriers, with underwriters on a client by client basis, saying, okay, we had this insured for 3.6 million last year. We're going to pare this down. We've run our due diligence, and it's now at 3 million. So we're starting to see some of that creep back to a more normal centered space. But I think on the whole, especially in the homeowners market, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen decreases in replacement cost values, not one. They've gone one direction, and that's up. And I don't know that that's accurate. I'd very much like to see the justification behind those figures.
Yeah.
It's an issue, and I think it's a problem that needs to be addressed.
Oh, go ahead.
And I've been
Oh, wait,
talking
wait.
to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned something that I think in one of the earlier questions, we were talking about how we're going to address the cost of insurance.
Yes.
Most companies are going to have what they call a cost estimator. My question is, and these are the questions that I'm going to ask those companies, not because I think that there's anything bad going on, but when you got, let's just say we got 5 major companies out here, why is it that all 5 of those, more times than not, are not going to have the same value in that? It's off of a zip code. If it's off of a building cost, lumber is zip code is what? So why is your cost on lumber or plywood or shingles or brick or labor? Why is it different depending on the company? So long story short, those are some of the other things that behind the scenes that I want answers for that I think affect the rate.
1 second. We have Chris, are you here?
I'm here.
Come on.
Just come this way and then the camera maybe, I think. Okay. So Chris, Meredith, it's nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, this is amazing. The thing just.
Wait a minute.
I
I
know.
don't like the looks of this. Back over here, Kayla.
So thank you for being with us. So we're just gonna keep going if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And then, okay, so you had
So yeah, so this is, both of you answered this a little bit, but it's something that's very important. We want to make sure that the consumer understands where the direction is on this. So, Chris, do you want to be thrown into the fire and go first? Do you want to answer?
Throw me in
this
the
one?
fire.
We're trying to do 2 minutes.
Go for it.
So I'll kind of let you know by putting this up. Okay.
Okay, so to give you a preference, what the prior question was is, is Oklahoma being impacted and taking some of the excess rate from other states? So this is the follow-up question to this. So how will you ensure carriers are not taking advantage of rate increases beyond what is actuarially justified?
Well, that's a good question, because right now I don't believe we're looking at it at all, if I'm not mistaken. At least that's what I've heard. And we need to start looking at that. I mean, there's no reason, when I step back in my job, I work with departments from Texas to Minnesota. And, like Texas, for example, they look at this stuff and they take a close look at all the rate increases. They make companies justify why they're increasing the rates and have good risk-based analysis, and they have a back and forth. I think there's no reason why we can't do the same thing, if for nothing else, to give the consumer confidence and rebuild trust in the system. Because right now, people, regardless of if it's true or not, they feel like no one is watching out for them. That's what I hear on the campaign trail. And I want to restore that trust. The biggest thing to me is having, that's a big piece of this, of my campaign, is making sure that people trust the insurance system. And right now it is completely broke. Whether, we want to think it's actually broke, people think it's broke. And that's really what matters. They need to have someone feel like someone's looking out for them.
If I didn't make that clear, we can do actuarial studies, actuarial audits on companies to make sure that the information that they're using to justify you can do those actuarial audits, and the insurance companies have to pay for those. You don't want to create an adversarial atmosphere to do business in, but at the same time, we're in a different environment now, price-wise and coverage-wise, for the consumers. So we've got to make sure that we take those extra steps to do that. But going back to the file and use, we've got to make sure that that is actuarially sound to justify, and that's available to the commission.
Well, and I think to contradict you a little bit, I think we're in an adversarial situation. I think insurance companies and Oklahoma consumers are at odds. The sentiment that Chris described is palpable. It's real. There is very little trust from your average consumer and faith in the insurance industry. And you've seen it. You've seen tremendous backlash against the health insurance industry. Obviously, the CEO of United Healthcare is a prime example of that. Man lost his life because of the consumer sentiment and the way that public perception is of our industry. And that's incredibly disheartening. And that's something that I think the insurance commissioner, I think we need to recognize that. And the adversarial game is already there. It's time for the commissioner and the OID to step in and be the mediator and be the peacemaker, so to speak, and bring stakeholders in to have a collaborative conversation about how we fix this and how we move forward in a positive way.
So do you mind if I ask another question? So we live rurally and our neighbors are all obviously in the same boat. Now we've had the fire, right? I mean, this is what happened to us. So now we're all like sitting on the edge of our seat going, oh my gosh, can we afford our mortgage and that, because of all of that. And we've had some really odd, like, for example, I couldn't tell you who my homeowner's policy is with because I don't know the company. And I've not been the person who's been in researching them. They're just some kind, and they scare me a little bit because something utterly or quietly or something like that. I mean, they're openly. Thank you. Awesome. Yes. But I'm like, I've never heard of awesome or openly. It's not State Farm. It's not, So what about, is it the little guys coming in to take over where the bigger guys are saying, I don't think you're a good ROI for me, so we're not going to come here. I'm just kind of curious if you guys could just give us kind of a little background on how insurance, because we've talked about it being adversarial, right? I mean, like Marty, you said, well, I don't want, us to get crosswise with these guys. I mean, we have to be able to have people who want to come here and insure Oklahomans, right? But how do you do that? And how do you find people and how do you know they're adequately amortized, if you will, to be able to pay off some of these big, because openly I'm like, I can look them up but how do I know that they have the background to be able to come in and, take care of? Does that seem like a reasonable question or am I
Yeah, we were talking about the financial stability to make sure if we do have a catastrophic loss, they have the funds to pay out. So I guess we'll go this way. I guess we'll do Marty, Bob, and then we'll circle this way. Okay.
For
Yes,
that
sir.
question?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, the insurance department has that responsibility to make sure that these companies are financially stable. And when those numbers start adding up to where that they are going in an opposite direction, they have the ability and the authority to take action. And that's been done many times to make sure that sometimes companies need additional investment. Sometimes they have to be taken over. But the insurance department has the ability to make sure that they're financially stable, and if not, they take appropriate action.
Okay.
All right, Bob.
And yeah, I mean, insurance companies are financially rated. AM Best is the most prominent financial rating authority in the insurance industry. And you can look up Openly's AM Best rating. If you just Google Openly AM Best, it'll pop right up and you'll be able to see A minus, A plus, and their financial strength rating and how large they are. It's a little cryptic. It's Roman numerals type of rating system, but you can see how well capitalized an insurance carrier is and where the money is and who they're backed by. And as an independent broker, we see insurance companies come in and out of the marketplace. They come to the independent side first, most often. They're not often direct to consumer type writers. There are some out there though. Seen a few of the Openleys of the world come into the Oklahoma marketplace and be, I think, a disruptive force in a positive way, trying to compete. They're competitive on price. As an independent agent, we try to do as much due diligence as we can before we put that proposal in front of our clients, because we want to make sure that the promise to pay is upheld, and how we can analyze and best discern their claims handling practices and how well and responsive they're going to be to our clients. Because ultimately, as an agent, a broker, that's who we care about. So it's a difficult situation. There has not been a glut of insurance companies just rushing into the state to write in the homeowner space, not in the last few years, but you'll see one or two trickle in every few years.
Chris?
Give you a little extra comfort. There's also what's called a guarantee fund. So I sit on multiple boards across the country, and our whole job is to make sure we take care of claims that are outstanding on companies that go bankrupt. And the rest of the industry puts in on the assessments to pay for those. If there's not enough in the fund, the industry as a whole, whoever's writing business, is assessed to make sure the claims get handled. So there's a backup plan for that as well.
Good information. All right, so
Well, this has been addressed a little bit in some of the prior questions, but this goes specifically and hits it head on. So Bob, you are up. So how will you improve transparency and communication for policyholders who struggle with claims?
So, I mean, the financial or consumer protection arm of the OID exists. Unfortunately, it seems like it's a well-kept secret. And I don't know that that's something that's been put out there in the public space enough. It's even been publicized enough. Marty addressed an issue of whether or not it's adequately staffed and funded. And I echo those same concerns and sentiments. And I've already addressed my issues of trying to guide some of my clients who had difficult claims or difficult situations with insurance carriers through that process. And the results were not great. So I think there's a dramatic need to take a close look at that division and make sure that they have what they need and that they're well trained and they're empathetic and able to take an Oklahoman who's having a difficult time through that situation and deliver a positive outcome.
Chris, do you need to read the question or are you good?
No, I'm good. Yeah, so claims transparency. The thing about insurance that's different than everything else is you don't know what you're buying until you have the worst day.
yes, that's
Right.
right. Sorry.
And I think, there's a couple of pieces I like to, beefing up the consumer division. I think they can be a lot more assertive in helping the customers instead of just making sure, hey, you followed the minimum limits of the law, insurance companies, so you're good. I think it needs to be more than that. I think they can be more of an advocate on that realm. And I think we can do a better job of being, I'm just an old football player, so I always think about school boards or scoreboards, right? And showing, hey, you're buying from this company, here's the complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still want that company? We need to have a clear idea of what you're buying, the best you can get before, because you're not going to know until you have that claim. And that you can have the same policy, but the claim handling could be totally different. So you're not getting the same thing with every company, and people need to know that.
Marty, you're up. You want me to read the question or?
No, as a legislator, former legislator, and as an agent manager in the insurance industry, the basis of where my thought process was in trying to solve issues was the taxpayer. How's it going to affect that taxpayer? The same thing on the commissioner's campaign is how is it going to affect the consumer? So I have no idea at this time, based off of my experience as a legislator, as an agent, as an individual, when we've used the compliance department, the consumer protection department at the Department of Insurance, they've been very, very helpful to me. I think it's a true statement in saying that I don't believe a lot of people understand the availability. I don't want to grow government, but I also don't want our consumers out there being left behind because they couldn't get an answer from an agency that they didn't know about. So I want to make sure that it's properly funded and that we've got not just it's staffed properly, but we've got it staffed with the kind of people that say, if there's any possible way that we can help you, we're going to do that. And I think the same way with insurance companies. We need to get back to the, and I know that there's a lot of companies out there that take this attitude, but we've got to have the attitude to avoid these complaints, that if there's any possible way that I can pay a claim, we're going to do that in a legal environment. We want to pay the claim if it's at all possible according to the policy that we've written. And then we eliminate, some of those things. But individuals, when that phone rings at the insurance department with somebody who's struggling with a claim, I want that phone answered quickly, properly, and with a kind and loving and caring voice on the other end, letting them know that we're going to try to help them find a solution. Not saying that that's not happening now, but we're going to make sure in the future, if we're fortunate enough to win this race, that's going to happen in the future.
Well, and I guess that goes back to what I was saying too about my friend having to hire a person to get between her and the insurance company because they wouldn't talk to her. It would seem like the OID should do that. Am I wrong?
It depends on the type of policy.
Okay.
What you may be describing, I think, is a third-party adjuster.
Yeah,
to come
that's
in-
correct.
to come in
Thank you.
and-
Yes, that's
and-
twice you've read my mind now. Good.
Insurance nerd, forgive me. The third-party adjusters serve a vital purpose, I think. A lot of people in the industry, a lot of agents don't like to have another cook in the kitchen, and certainly the carrier side adjusters don't want another cook in the kitchen. Somebody who may be contradicting what they're telling the policyholder. But I think they serve a vital purpose, especially when you reach a deadlock in that process. I think the OID can step in if the third-party adjuster and the carrier adjuster are at odds. I think there's a place for that, just to have sort of a final adjudicating mechanism there. But it's difficult. More often than not, the third-party adjusters step in and ultimately the problem gets solved.
I'll let you throw it open in case you guys want to say add anything.
I just had, I was looking at, interesting, the budget for OID. Almost $1 billion is coming in revenue. And the OID is only spending 20 on budget. So I think they're going to be 16 in 2004, 16 million. The rest is going to half general revenue and half pensions. So I think a small diversion, and this is all coming in from the insurance companies, by the way. This is not coming in from taxpayers. It's funded by the insurance industry. So I think it makes sense if we're having some issues in the insurance industry that they pay for helping fix it. And, taking some of that, I don't think it would be much of that massive amount of money to divert it back into the insurance department instead of just going out. That way, you know exactly what you're paying for. If I say I'm beefing up consumer division, you're knowing where that money's going. When it goes in general revenue, I don't know where it's going. It can go to anything. So that's just an idea I've been thinking about.
I go back to my original statement. If I'm walking in the door today, the consumer protection, that division is going to be the first place that I go to make sure that consumers are being protected, consumers are being serviced and taken care of properly. I want an assessment done moving forward because we're in a different environment. You go back to 2018, Glenn walked into a totally different environment than what we're walking into today. And I just feel a strong obligation to make sure that people have an avenue that they can go and get answers or be redirected in the proper way, but ultimately find a solution to the issues that they feel like is giving them the.
Do you want to do maybe one more question and then just kind of do what are you thinking? Because we're at 1:14 and I would like, I don't know, there's one question up there that I would like to get into because I an interesting question.
Okay.
About whether or not they should.
Well, I do have one. Oh, I saw those. Yes. So I do have one question where if this does not get addressed, I mean, this could have catastrophic effects on multiple industries. And so we really want to make sure that we address this. So I think you said, Chris, I think we're going to start with you this time. So how will you address fraud and escalating litigation, which drives premiums higher for everyone?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, my whole thought process on, as commissioner, I'm pushing to be an advocate. And I'm going to be an advocate on the holistic approach to the system. Anything that's going into the cost of I'm just thinking about home right off the bat. Anything that's going into that, that's causing the cost increase, it needs to be something that needs a leader and it needs to be advocated to be fixed. Litigation and fraud are parts of that. Someone needs to lead the effort on reforming, just like Florida, they passed reforms that cause prices to go down, competition to enter the market. There's things we can do there to push here in Oklahoma. We can copy, we know it's working. We can take it here, but someone has to lead it. And it can't be, well, I'm an insurance commissioner silo. I don't do litigation reform. It's got to be holistic, in my opinion. And that's what I want to go after.
Marty, you want me to read the question or?
As I've already previously stated, we cannot have sacred areas in the insurance industry to address the situation that we're in today. Whether that's litigation, whether that's cost. I'm going to give you an example. For years, going back to my time as a manager, my time as an agent, we had little bitty games that were being played when something happened to a person's house. You get to the roof, they say, well, if you sign up with us, we'll waive the deductible. Oh, really? How does that happen? Because the contract that was signed with the person that bought the homeowner's policy said, in the event of this type of claim, you're going to pay the first X number of dollars. But somehow when we have this type of a claim, then all of a sudden we will waive that deductible. So do you really think that deductible was waived, or did it go into the final payment that the insurance picked up? And then we wonder why insurance costs have went up, because that's been happening for a long, long time. And so we cannot have any sacred areas. Companies can't continue to just assume they're going to do business the way they've been doing business because we're not in the same environment. Consumers can't continue to pay the cost that's being paid. And for that legal system in the middle, the fact is that when you don't have honest players, whether that's a corporation side or a consumer side, there has to be somebody in the middle to mitigate those type of things. But when that system is being abused, that has to be addressed as well. Some of that may require legislative action, but I want people to know that are in the audience today, we will look at all areas and especially those areas that may feel that have been very sacred in the past, because we want to find solutions to the issues that we're having to deal going forward.
So the tagline for my campaign is make insurance fair again. And so with that in mind, you mentioned fraud and you mentioned litigation, which we could do another hour on those two topics.
We have a podcast on that.
And so bottom line is fraud isn't fair. So someone is being wronged, whether it's the insurance carrier, the consumer ultimately pays the price for fraud. We bear the brunt of those increased costs because of fraudulent acts, whether by contractors or by insurance carriers or by policyholders in some cases, fraudulent claims on groups of that nature. So obviously that's something that the OID is very strongly looking at. The fraud division of OID, I think, is well taken care of on that, and they're doing a good job. From a litigation standpoint, I don't know if you're talking about litigation against insurance carriers or fraud or the litigious environment of Oklahoma. The bottom line is, I think that there is a conversation potentially to be had for some kind of tort reform, but I also feel very strongly that if we provide undue protection to insurance carriers and take away some of the sting of their penalty for a bad action against an Oklahoma consumer, they're just going to do it more. So I have mixed feelings on the topic, but I've also seen from dealing with clients of mine in the healthcare and senior living industry the litigation rate has gone up dramatically against those kind of operators who are just doing a good job of taking care of our most vulnerable citizens that require that kind of long-term care environment. So it's a struggle, and that is definitely something that the legislature should be looking into. From an OID perspective, it is no secret that, additional litigation or undue litigation is ultimately going to cost Oklahoma consumers more.
Ultimately, consumers end up picking up the tab. They
Indeed.
really do. So do you want to ask the question about cloud seeding, and then we've got a wrap-up question?
Yeah, oh, great, no, that'd be good. So there has been anymore, it's so hard when you get on the, on the internet to decide, is this a real thing, or are we just a conspiracy theory? What's going on? Well, I think at this point, we know factually that there is weather modification. People do it, and they're paid to do it. People pay them to do it. So we know what's happening. We know there was a considerable amount of conspiracy, involving some cloud seeding that happened in Texas, very similar to, where the flooding actually occurred. And I don't know why I can't think of the name of the river suddenly. And if weather modification is occurring, and I think we know that it's occurring on some level, is there some way to factor in why, like Dorn says, why wouldn't the insurance lobbyists speak out against weather modification? Because if you've got something that's going on that would cause a big event, that obviously, your house could be swept away, it would seem to me like maybe that would be something that people might not want to deal with. So, I mean, just a thought. I thought it was kind of an interesting question. So I guess we're at Chris.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I do think insurance companies are being more and more involved in pushing back when risk mitigation has not been done. Like if a city is constantly flooded because they failed to maintain their roadways, they're taking action. That is happening. The cloud seeding is probably the next level of risk, and maybe why you're not seeing it most of the time is flood. Most of that is to the federal government. Like most companies don't sell flood insurance. So, I mean, it's available, it's out there, but most companies don't have that. And so that might be part of it, was that specific issue. But risk mitigation, I mean, you can see it in, things are on the horizon. Like if California could, control their forests and they're causing all these fires because they don't maintain their forests, well, who's at fault really? So subrogation is on the cause. So it's complicated, but that's kind of where it's at.
Marty, thoughts?
It's new, it goes through that phase of, well, I heard that they're doing this now. Is that really accurate or not? And then when you start seeing that there may be some evidence of those things actually coming to fruition, it's the same way with regulation or litigation. When something new like that happens and it has adverse effects, and the adverse effects can be proven, then that's when you start seeing the regulation and the litigation coming to monitor that, to where that if in fact it did cause these adverse reactions, that cause lives, that cause property damage, then you'll see people that will, start trying to control or regulate that to some level.
I'm fascinated at it and ignorant on the topic. I'll be totally transparent about that. I'm fascinated at the idea that perhaps some form of cloud seeding could be used to weaken a storm that would otherwise adversely affect Oklahomans. But I also see the potential that it could be completely rampant, out of control. To me, it's playing God, and I think that's something we ought not do. And I think I could just leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't want that job.
All right, well, this is a two-part question, but this will be kind of your closing remarks. So what do you say, maybe 3 minutes on this one? So what are your top 3 priorities? Okay, yes. All right, yeah. Commentator error. All right. What are your top 3 priorities that you plan to focus on in your first year? And then what is your overall long-term vision? So I think, Chris, you start. So Marty, this will go to you and we'll go this way.
Well, I think I've already stated that numerous times. We've got to make sure that consumers are taken care of. That's the foundation of my campaign, because I relate that to making sure that this is a state agency. We're using tax dollars. We've got to make sure that we're taking care of the consumer and the taxpayer at home. So I want to make sure day one that we're taking care of the consumer in any other service related area from the insurance department. Now, you're out on the doorstep, you're hearing a constant beat of the drum about the prices of homeowners insurance and the other areas of insurance as well. And I've stated that in this podcast, that nothing is sacred. I don't have an area that I'm going to go to because I want to target this sector or that sector. The insurance industry is a huge ship. We need someone with a broad-based level of experience that is not afraid to tackle whatever area needs to be tackled. I want the company's input. I want the legal system's input. I want the consumer's input, and anything in that middle to where we can find solutions of bringing back an answer to the cost and the affordability of insurance. Because if we start handling it through legislation, those pendulums are going to start wider swings, and that's never good for the consumer at the end of the day. And I guess to sum that up, we want to make sure that the department is there for the people in general, whether it's companies that want to do business. We want to create that environment that companies want to come to Oklahoma to do business. More companies that come to Oklahoma, the more competitive our situation is, the better chance that we have of having those competitive rates. So we want to make sure that we're creating the environment that they want to do business and they can be financially stable. At the end of the day, I want people to know that the department is there to serve them, that we're there to be responsible for the things that the legislator has given us the authority to do. And we want to do that at the highest possible level.
I'm going to read it again, or you?
No,
Okay.
I think I got it. I mean, day one, we need to have a strategy. We need to have some type of a summit to pull together the relevant stakeholders that address the Oklahoma homeowners and property insurance market, whether those are including contractors, insurance carriers, adjusters, attorneys, everybody that's got a seat at this table, or that's got a stake in this, has a seat at the table, and coming up with real strategies and real plans to improve the outcomes for the Oklahoma insurance market from a homeowners and property standpoint. I don't think that type of collaboration has existed in prior years, and I think it has to start with that. I think there needs to be an increased focus on support for seniors and physicians, treating physicians from the healthcare side of the industry. I think that's another adversarial relationship that exists that needs to be addressed. I think what's the burdens being put on our physicians to get approval for healthcare for their patients is burdensome and problematic, and it's to the detriment of the long-term health of Oklahomans. And from a long-term standpoint, I know you asked for 3, I'm going to give you 2 big points. We are going to have an 8 to 10 page strategy document coming out at the first of the year to address the overall plan for the OID coming from my campaign. It'll be holistic and probably a lot easier than me just rambling on and on. But long-term, I want Oklahoma to be a viable and attractive marketplace for insurance carriers to come in and profitably write business, so long as they behave themselves and treat the Oklahoma consumer with the respect and positive good faith that they deserve, because this is a promise to pay, and we're going to make insurance fair again.
Chris, do you want me to read the question, or?
No, I got it. Thank you. So my number one focus is homeowners insurance affordability. We're paying too much, we're getting too little. There's 3 ways I'm going to attack that. Restoring trust, so you have a commission that is looking out for you and making sure the rates are transparent on how they're arrived at, and make sure we're not paying for other states, and make sure they're actuarially sound and risk-based. That's number one, and you're going to know I'm working on that for you. Second piece is to reduce the affordability. We're going to have to address the costs in the system. You've got a ton of waste, you've got a ton of fraud, I'm gonna appoint a deputy commissioner of roofing. I mean, I call it that, but they're gonna go after the roofing industry and clean it up, partnering with the roofing association. And that's a major source of the problem. And then litigation reform. We're going to push for litigation reform that is working in other states. And then the final piece is reducing risk. I mean, ultimately, long term, we've got to build better homes. We've got to push the fortified program, get better roofing that doesn't just fly away every time there's a storm. We've got terrible weather. We've got to build to that risk, and we got to do a better job of that. And there's multiple ways to enhance that program with private funding and other things. So we're going to push that really hard. Those are my 3 areas to address the homeowners situation.
Okay. I was just thinking about something as you guys were talking about. There was I believe it was in Texas, where there were a whole group of home builders that were just building subpar. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, but I'm sure it's.
Oh, it was it was a thing, and these poor people were buying these homes, and the first big window would come along, so then the insurance company, and I think, and part of the reason why I'm saying that is I'm not sure that people, we've got a big audience this morning. I don't think that people stop to think about how big the insurance issue is. I mean, it's not just, you're right. There is so much involved in that, from home builders to, like you guys have talked about. It's just an amazingly large issue. And right now, with the unaffordability, just all the way across the chart, something has to happen. Whatever's happening now isn't working. And we definitely need another strategy. I did want, before we close out though, Chris, you weren't able to kind of tell who you are and why you're running. And so if you want to go ahead and do that, so, people who have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, so Chris Merideth, husband, been married 26 years, got 4 kids, a pair of twins, so keep praying for me. They're 14 now, so that's a challenge. Lifelong Oklahoman. I grew up in Midwest City, Oklahoma. My grandparents are from the Duncan area on both sides. Played football at the University of Oklahoma. I met my wife. She was a football trainer. I think I met her taking my ankle or something. I don't remember, but either that or my wrist, splashing water on my face. But yeah, those are good times. But yeah, I was studying bioterrorism preparedness right after 9/11 at the University Health Science Center. But I was tired of being a broke college kid, and my agent referred me to this claims center they were putting together. And I went over there and became a claims adjuster, worked my way up, ended up running our claims department, $1 billion total loss unit. And then I got into the same problems. I was trying to help a lady with her claim, and I had to mail her paperwork because they needed a notary. And then she had to mail it back. And she's like, I got 4 kids. I don't have a car anymore. How am I supposed to do this? I thought, man, this is just ridiculous. So I went, talked to our team, like, why do we have a notary? And like, what's the law? It's like, why don't we change it? Change the law. What does that mean? How do you do that? Like, well, if people wrote it, we can undo it. And that's kind of launched us into this thing all across the country where we changed the laws, just trying to better the system and modernize it. That got me into the government affairs role that I'm currently serving with a major company. I won't say their name. You can look it up. But I cover 11 states across the center of the country, from Texas to Minnesota, Wisconsin, serve on a variety of either state boards, guarantee funds, trade associations. So I've seen everything kind of from the 50,000 foot level, but I've also been down in the dirt, scratching and clawing, trying to get things changed. And what you're going to get out of me, what I love to do is be an advocate. I love to find the problem. I love to fix a problem and then get a grassroots organization to march up and get it changed.
Ken?
Well, this was a unique setup. We've never done this before, so I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Well, I think everybody did. I mean, we had quite the audience even for a while there. It's gone up and down.
We didn't share the coffee though.
No. I did with Kayla.
Well, and we might do
I
this
did with
again.
Kayla's office.
We didn't even get to half the questions. So
No,
yeah.
and but I hate to go too much longer because it's 1:34 and these guys have to go, but I did want to say, I did want to just address a couple of things that are on the board right now. Is it time to start holding these multi-million-dollar NGOs accountable for the adverse actions being caused by their wants, which are causing the extreme effects of disasters? And that was kind of again, sometimes the show can go a little bit out on the conspiracy limb, but I do think there is a lot, because there's another one that I have read about, and that's Papa Claus again. And she says, every time a senior has to sell their house because they can't afford to insure it, some corporation is buying it. A young family is priced out because corporations don't pay a mortgage or interest, they own the property. And I mean, they're gonna pay property tax, obviously, unless we can do something about that. But there are so many things going on, and I guess let's just close just for, this is fun. This is a fun thing. You can do it if you want to. Is there some kind, do you see some kind of a thing that you could call a conspiracy theory? I mean, is there something out there in your periphery that you're like, I don't know, this might have something to do with it? It's just a fun thing.
Sure. I mean, I think it's no secret that as a country, the median age is going up, and more of our seniors are no longer able to live in their homes, and they're going into care facilities, assisted living, long-term care, something like that. And that's creating a type of supply in the home marketplace that the corporations are taking advantage of. I'd like to believe that it would be an opportunity for first-time home buyers to get into home ownership. But maybe that's, you follow the money, whether it's a conspiracy or not. If you follow the money and you look at some of those trends, there's certainly an opportunity for some type of exploitation of that knowledge that the silver tsunami, as they call it, is upon us. And it's something that the long-term care industry is facing, and they're having to build up and have adequate capacity to care for our most vulnerable seniors in their latter years. So if anytime something like that occurs, those big switches in population demographics, there's somebody that's going to take advantage of that somehow.
Guys,
I don't know. I was just thinking about something somebody told me yesterday that was quite a conspiracy. Yeah. But I don't know, maybe shingles are being held and aged prematurely. So when they go out, they're already aged and they have to be replaced more often.
oh, that's interesting.
Since roofing roofing to me is the core part of our housing insurance affordability. So I've been just knee deep in roofing stuff, and that was a new one that I heard, and I was like, okay, but maybe, I don't know, just an idea.
But in all honesty, we're about to the end of our roof life. And we had somebody come out, and I literally thought I was going to die when they told me how much it was going to cost. I mean, I was literally standing there going, and so how many children can I sell on the open market to be able to, I mean, it's a thing. It's not just it's not just a small thing. Well, thank you for playing along with that, because that was just kind of something fun. But I do, I asked Marty, and he kind of, did you want to chime in
Sure.
on the kids? Oh, we'll do it.
I just thought you went to Chris.
Cool. I don't want to step on you there.
No, I think that there's corporations that are taking advantage of that situation. And again, it's one of those pendulum swings. They're gonna take advantage of that, and there's gonna be repercussions for, affecting that supply and demand in the market. And when that supply and demand effect gets great enough to that average citizen out there, and they get upset enough about it, then first thing you know, they'll start taking action on that. But I do believe that there's corporations out there that are taking advantage, and it's definitely having an effect on the housing market. So the people can still be in control, but sometimes they have to be nudged, to get that done. And most of the time when you start affecting their pocketbook, they get real interested.
Well, and I think that's kind of what's happening right now. Maybe people are getting interested because their pocketbook is being impacted. Guys, it was very good to meet you. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for coming. I really appreciate that. We'll have to, if you've got anything you want to send me, we'll throw some questions together. Maybe you can add them to what the guys have said. I will put all your campaign information out when we publish the video on our webpage. So you'll have your campaign information out there and then people can reach out to you. Is there anything you want to say just really fast as it close?
Thank you for having us. It's great to have dialogue and share ideas about what we think. I think all three of us want to make Oklahoma a better place. And I applaud and commend both of these gentlemen for throwing their hat in the ring like I have. And I think we're all working for the better good.
Well, I can tell you, we all want one of you to fix this. All right, so this is going to be an odd one. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work. Okay, so we're going to say goodbye for today. Be sure to share this video with your friends so they have an idea of what's going on with the insurance commission race. So thanks for joining us. We will see you again on Friday. We'll have Katie Smith with us on Friday, so you don't want to miss that. And we'll see you again then at 9 o'clock. Thanks for joining us.